time for this.
Oh, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt your little quest. Captain Ahab has to go hunt his whale.
What?
You do have books in the 24th century.
Hey Star Trek fans, welcome to another edition of the Treklit Report, where I talk about a recent Star Trek fiction release. This time around, I'm talking about the Autobiography of Jean-Luc Picard, the story of one of Starfleet's most inspirational captains. Because it is an autobiography, it was of course written by the great Captain Jean-Luc Picard himself. However, it was edited by David A. Goodman. Released in October of 2017, I suspect time travel shenanigans. It adheres to Star Trek canon, of course, but it is not in continuity with the pocketbook Star Trek timeline. Rather, the autobiography follows its own path with regards to events that do not explicitly occur in the television series or films. The book does serve to fill in a number of gaps in previously established Trek lore, most notably Picard's youth on the Picard family vineyard. I especially liked this part of the book. It provides a really nice motivation for Picard's decision to join Starfleet and to make his name. His motivation does prove to be quite interesting, and I really like the fact that his relationship with his brother and his father figure strongly into this decision, as well as a chance encounter with the portraits of famous Picards throughout history that exists in the cellar below the Picard family home. Also covered in great detail is much of Picard's early career. We don't hear a lot about his time as a junior officer outside of some examples from Tapestry, where we see Picard as a young ensign awaiting his first deep space assignment, and the incident that led to the loss of his real heart having to be replaced with an artificial heart. We also see a lot of the historical events of this period play out, including the near war with the Klingon Empire, which I thought was a nice touch, and the role that the Enterprise C plays in averting that war. We tend to forget that this was, of course, only 20 years or so before the Next Generation, so of course Picard would have played a role in some of these events. At least he would have been a junior officer in Starfleet. There are a lot of incidents in his life that are fleshed out in the book, sometimes to great effect. David A. Goodman has a great imagination here. I mean, of course, Picard writes his memories down flawlessly. For example, there's a throwaway line in Tapestry where Q talks about Picard saving the ambassador's life in one particular mission. That, of course, is fleshed out quite a bit in the book, and we get to see the incident, one of these many incidents that kind of led Picard to become the person that he is. Of course, Star Trek fans are familiar with Picard's tenure as captain of the USS Stargazer before his time aboard the Enterprise. In The Next Generation, we learn that his captaincy of that ship lasted 20 years, which is an incredibly long time when you think about it, to be captain of one vessel. And we get a lot of insight into that period of his life, as well as the years he spent aboard the Stargazer before becoming her captain. This was obviously a very significant part of his life, and it's really cool to see it get a good treatment here. We have seen parts of this, of course, in other novels. The Star Trek Stargazer series, for example, goes into a lot of Picard's time aboard the Stargazer, as well as the Christopher L. Bennett Lost Era novel, The Buried Age. However, the Autobiography of Jean-Luc Picard does a really great job of kind of stitching it all together into one cohesive story. And like I said, it's not in continuity with any of those pocketbooks novels. So this is a completely different take on Picard's early years, and one that I find really interesting and a lot of fun to read. Also appreciated are the context that this book adds to a lot of Picard's experiences. For example, we see him making a lot of friends in Starfleet in his early part of his career, and these are friends that would go on to, continue to be big personalities in Starfleet. And of course, in The Best of Both Worlds Part 2, Picard, who has been assimilated into the Borg Collective as Locutus, leads a battle against Starfleet forces at Wolf 359, in which we learn that 39 starships are destroyed and over 10,000 personnel are killed. What is something that I never think about, and I've never thought about before with regards to that, is a lot of the people that were killed would have been Picard's friends, and this book really drives that point home. For example, and I'm going to be spoiling this book here, so if you haven't read it, I really hope you have, or if not, turn off this video and go do so. People such as Marta Botanides and Corton Zweller, who are Picard's friends from Tapestry, they are, of course, captains of starships at Wolf 359, and they're killed. And it really drives this point home about what a tragedy that was in Picard's life and what it really means to him. Like I say, this book just adds context to those moments that kind of fly by during the series, but when you really think about it, would be hugely traumatic events in Picard's life. And the book does a great job of really making that feel real. Also of interest in this book is one quick little blink and you'll miss it reference to Star Trek Discovery. In the 3rd season TNG episode, Sarek, the Vulcan ambassador, mind melds with Captain Picard. And the little flashes of memory that he gets there includes one very small reference to Michael Burnham. So this was a nice touch. This book was written, of course, before the series had aired. So the producers of the show through CBS let David A. Goodman know a little bit about that story so that he could include it in the book. And it's just a nice little, when you read it, it just connects everything together really nicely. This book really drives home the fact that David A. Goodman really knows his Star Trek and is really able to stitch together all these disparate pieces really well. And some of the takes that he has on some of Star Trek history differ a little from what you might expect having watched the TV series, and especially if you've read the books. But I think that his take on a number of events in this period of history are really good and really fit well. So I think if you have an open mind, you will really enjoy this book. I certainly did, and I have to highly recommend this. I would definitely give it, I think, 4 out of 4 Captain's Pips on Captain Picard's collar. On the Literary Treks podcast, Bruce Gibson and I got the chance to talk to the author, David A. Goodman, in episode 209, I'm in Love with Beverly 2. Here's a quick excerpt from that episode.
Yeah, and I was really sort of taking that number, thank you, taking that number that Nora Satie says in Drumhead about that he killed 11,000 people. And it's like, these are starship captains, starship crews. You realize he's got to know a lot of these people personally. Like, that's something that is never touched on. It's touched on in terms a little bit in family, a little bit about how they took him apart and he wasn't strong enough to stand up to them. But you never deal with, and that was you asked me where I started with the book, and now you made me remember that I started with, I'm going to write a book where I'm going to introduce a lot of new characters, and most of them are going to be killed at Wolf 359.
So be sure to catch that episode of Literary Treks. It was a really great discussion and we had a lot of fun. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'll have a link to that in the description below. Well, those of you who've had a chance to read the autobiography of Jean-Luc Picard, what did you think of it? Do you agree with me that this is a great book to have on any Star Trek fan's bookshelf? Or is this one a pass for you? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks especially, of course, to the Patreon supporters. I really do appreciate it. And everyone else, thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, and even just watching. I love you for it. Thank you so much. I'll see you all in the next video. And until next time, live long and prosper.